Hello, fiends, friends, and familiars. My name's Matt Orozco, and I'm here with two gentlemen in support of their newest film, He Never Left, from Dread Presents and Epic Pictures. I have with me James Morris, who is our writer, director, and actor, as well as the star of the film, Colin Cunningham. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you.
Well, I know we don't have all the time to get into things, so I'm just going to keep it to a few questions. But the first one being for you, James. When did you first begin working on what eventually would become He Never Left?
Um, that would have been 2020. I had a lot of extra time during COVID, like so many of us did, and watching a lot of movies and just kind of started to have this idea in my head. And it was actually, I think, the inspiration, the core inspiration. I was watching Rear Window, and I just love that isolation feel where the guy's stuck and he can't do anything. And I thought, what would be another way to incorporate a feeling like that? And it just kind of evolved from there, and I just pieced it together over the next little bit.
Outstanding. Yeah, I know we all had a little bit of time on our hands while we were at home, so it's nice that you put it to good use, right?
Yeah,
Uh, well, yeah, we can't apply judgment to how we spend our time during the pandemic, but as long as something good came out of it for some of us, that's a plus. Now, Colin, this is a pretty intense role, right? A lot of very demanding emotionally, and you certainly demonstrate a wide range as far as your ability to really get into character. So I'm curious, what kind of preparation did you do to reach such a visceral emotional state at times?
Well, I think it started again with the script because when James sent me the script, I loved the idea of a guy who's trapped and and can't get out, and he's got his own guilt going on, and he's on the run from the law. And so for me, that was what really attracted me to it. The horror slasher Halloween stuff that was already kind of baked into the cake, but it was the who is this guy and what makes him tick and what world is he bringing to this world is the thing that I just found absolutely fascinating. So it was just awesome. It was great to work on a character that wasn't superficial or disposable. It wasn't like, yeah, well, I ran out of gas, or a couple of kids from high school. It was like people who are kind of in their own personal hell and end up in a situation, which I just thought was awesome. And the arc was almost in reverse. You've got a guy who is nuts and filled with fear and guilt, but by the end of it, there's redemption and there's atonement and there's this kind of he reaches he goes through the fires of hell and comes out a little wiser and a little different. And I was fascinated by that. I really, really was. I just thought it's deep and it's not typical. And so often as actors, we get paid to work on stuff that's not so good, and your job is to dignify crappy whatever. And this, it was like, no, you can sink your teeth into this, and this is the kind of work that I want to do. So, and unfortunately, Hollywood's really not making a whole lot of it, and
Right.
what little there is out there, you still got to audition for it and beat out 500 guys to make it happen. So, I really considered it a gift to be a part of it. It's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. And I would agree. I think there's such a fertile ground in independent horror right now that's picking up a lot of the slack from the studio system to be able to create more diverse ideas, but also bring more nuanced characters, right? The character you play is, I don't know if you'd consider him a likable person on the start. And even through his redemption arc, you start to realize that this is a very valuable individual. So James, when you were writing out that character, especially, he's it's such an intense character too. What kind of sources did you draw on for inspiration? Because you mentioned Rear Window, but a little different than James Cagney as far as the role here,
So I, yeah,
or Jimmy Stewart's.
no, it's a layered answer. So I've actually been working as a police officer as a day job for many years. So a lot of that character came from people who I have met. It's not one person per se, but it's accumulation of that kind of broken person who's lost themselves and who is just trying to justify their actions for what they've done, but also who necessarily aren't bad. They've just made a bad mistake. And so Gabriel is all of that. He's 10 years of experiences wrapped into one person. And so I took that idea into the script, and then when I brought it to Colin, we talked about different approaches, and I sent him to watch a couple movies that were pretty realistic to the experiences I've had. Like I think American History X was one, and a couple other things, just to kind of look at these some of these performances of criminals in film. And Colin came back to it, and I've had partners who I still work with who come and they're like, man, Colin just I had a hard time not believing he was a convicted felon, a guy on the run, just the mannerisms he brought to it. And so I guess it's that. It was an outlet for me to create this person who I've met over and over and over and over again, but put them in a situation where they have a chance to come out of it and to play with that character in an interesting setting. And so that I think that's where that originally came from for me. And Colin brought a lot to it too, as we were working on script and early versions, and he was throwing ideas at us and we're working on the story and stuff. He brought a lot of great dialogue suggestions, and I remember he'd say like, yeah, if you say that, it's a little on the nose, and he understood the character basically as well as I
Right.
did at the time we kind of got into it. So Colin made it very easy to make that look, really, really in depth. So my hat off to you, Colin. You really killed it.
No, it's so awesome, man. Just
I
awesome.
mean, it sounds kismet, right? It's like, you have this kind of wealth of experience that you're using to create this character of someone you've seen in various manifestations through your work. But then you have someone like Colin who can bring, this kind of actor's lens of how do I bring this person off the page into real life. So I think it works kind of splendidly well together. And, another thing that is quite germane to independent film, but, something that we're seeing even more is just this kind of use of minimal locations. Did you have access to like an abandoned motel, or how did you go about the shooting process and working with such a, limited amount of real estate, but still getting a lot out of it?
Um, so it wasn't an abandoned motel. It's this little motel I've been driving by for years. I used to go fishing, or used to, I still go fishing and camping up the canyon. And it's a ways away from where I live, but I remember just driving by it over and over and over again over the years. And as I started to do film stuff, I thought, man, that'd be a cool location to shoot a movie. And one time I was driving through town and I just stopped and called hey, can I ask you a question? And I asked the owner, could we shoot a movie here? Like, is that even possible? And she was immediately receptive, just like, yeah, absolutely. And so I was working on the idea at that time. So it was almost just an immediate thing. Okay, if we can get this movie made, this is the location. Um, but it was the early drafts were probably more of a one location style, but it kind of started to evolve when we built the lore of the town and some of the the law enforcement chasing them and things like that. So it kind of grew out of a one location movie. But yeah, the original concept, yeah, was just a guy who's in a motel who couldn't leave, and just how to make that interesting, how to make that unique, because we've seen things like that before, but tried to come up with a new spin on it.
And Colin, I mean, did you experience any sort of cabin feverishness from kind of having so many scenes in that little motel room?
He lived in the motel room where he was
Yeah, I
down.
was. Yeah,
All right.
because we all stayed there. But look, I think that's the testament to just to story, because there's no point in having 100 million locations if the story sucks. If you should be able if you can tell a story in a room and never feel like, wow, we're still in this room, the location becomes irrelevant. It's all about what's happening. Is the actor, do you believe them? And is there a pacing that's happening? And that's always the most important thing. I mean, it really, really is. Are there beats? Does it evolve? Do new things happen? Does the story move? And this one, it does. So it's not like I think it's in kind of in hindsight, you think, oh wow, that was really kind of in one location. But I mean, if you watch like a film like, The Babadook or something like that, you're not thinking, wow, that whole thing was just shot pretty much in the house. It's like, no, it's just you're going from beat to beat and from emotional context to emotional context. And you can be riveted by a film whether it's got 100 locations or whether it's got one. And the thread that ties them both together is just the fact that it's good. Are you engaged? Do you believe it? And is it working? And I'm happy to say, at least I think that He Never Left certainly does, and it's hard to pull off in with four walls. It really is. You need to have something. You can't you can't show up and bullshit that because it'll
Right.
fall apart real fast.
Yeah, I mean the manic kind of expressions and way you portray Gabriel certainly don't feel like someone just showed up and put that on you. That feels like a real intentional work to get into that state of mind. And my last question for you both is my favorite one to ask is if you were asked to program a double feature, He Never Left is one of the films, but you get to pick another film to go along with it. What film would you program alongside it?
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
A little levity.
I don't know, James. What do you think? What would be a good double bill?
Oh,
Oh, I got one. They Live Inside Us, and He Never Left.
okay. That's
Right?
yeah, yeah.
Couldn't be any better than that.
The stylings. I would say like No Country for Old Men.
Ooh,
Uh,
I like that.
both character focused things. One horror, one more disturbing thriller. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And they both have kind of a modern Western feel to them. Because He Never Left does have kind of that sense of a pacing of a Western where you have, you know, person, problem, situation, and then all of it kind of comes together in the end.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that'd be a great double feature and certainly be up for a James Morris double as well. So, gentlemen, I just want to say thank you to you both for the time today, and a reminder to everyone watching this that Dread Presents and Epic Pictures will be bringing He Never Left to theaters November 1st. If for whatever reason you can't get to the theater and see it, you don't have an excuse. You can go find it on demand on the 5th, shortly after. So, wish you both the best with the rest of the press you do today, and again, congratulations on a great film.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt. Appreciate it. Thank you, brother.
My pleasure.